If I may have your attention, we're going to kick things off. So welcome and thank you for coming. I'm Chris Kelly, founder and CEO of Servata, and I appreciate you all joining us on this hot and humid October night. Very hot and very humid. I hope some of you are here for the content and not the air conditioning and the free beer, but if not, we still welcome you. So this is the 5th time we've done this event, which is very exciting. It gets bigger and better every time. So we're excited to host and excited to see this community grow. And I'll say a few words about why we do this and who we are, then I'll turn it over to John to get us started. So we do this event for 2 reasons. One is around education, and one is around community. So the education piece is hopefully obvious. It's these 6 seats up here. So we have gathered some of the best minds in brand measurement and ad measurement from around the country and around New York City. And we're going to hear from them on some of the most critical topics in how brands and agencies and media companies are thinking about measurement and analytics today. So that's very exciting. And the other piece is the community. So it's a fairly small brand measurement world, as we all know. So it's good to meet each other, support each other, work with each other, hire each other, whatever that may be. So we're glad to have that community bonding portion of tonight. So for some of you, this is your first interaction with Servata, I know. So we thought we'd give a very quick word about what we actually do and who we are. So Servata is the brand intelligence platform. And that means that we have software and data to make brand marketing more impactful. And we interpret that as meaning we have to help you plan, measure, and optimize brand marketing. Whether you're a brand, an agency, or a media partner, you will use our platform to make your brand marketing more impactful at that brand planning stage, the measurement stage, or the optimization stage. So that's what we do, and we're very excited for what we're building. We're very excited to work with many of you in this room tonight because we've seen this massive, drastic change in how brand marketing works in the era of programmatic. And we didn't believe that a corresponding shift in brand measurement had actually occurred until we started the company and built out the platform. So that's why we exist and why we are doing what we do and excited to work with many of you. But enough about us. I will now turn it over to my colleague John Stewart, who's our Vice President of Measurement, and he will introduce our esteemed panel and kick off tonight's content. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks, everyone. You know, this is the 2nd year we've done this in the autumn, and it's the 2nd time it's rained on the evening we've done this. So you guys get a gold star for coming out, braving the rain, listening to some measurement talk. Love it. Okay, so before we get started, I wanted to introduce everybody. So big round of applause for the panel that we've got up here. First up to bat is Beth Coleman. Beth, couple words?
A couple words. About me?
So,
about the weather?
We want to, what we're going to hear is from everybody is name, title, what they do at work, and their favorite brand growing up.
Okay. Ooh, okay. Now, because you said, ooh, that's a lot of pressure. I oversee marketing partner insights at Viacom. So I have a team that works on research and data directed at everything we can do for ad sales and support ad sales across all our brands. And those brands are Nickelodeon to TV Land. And if you were at the Ad Week panel last week, you heard me say from pimples to wrinkles, from diapers to diapers, from cradle to grave, whatever you want to call it. But we study all generations, so we put a big focus, and particularly because we have the most youthful brands. In the media space, we focus a lot on youth and their consumption. So I have a great team, and we dedicate ourselves to that. And I've been doing that for a long time. That's all I'm going to say about that. And my growing up, growing up like Fisher Price Hasbro, or growing up like making a, I would probably say like Calvin Klein, someone growing up in the 80s. You know, your Brooke Shields, I feel like that was a big impact. I feel like designer jeans were big in the 80s, for those of you who weren't even born there. There you go, right? I got one of those. And that was all about advertising, right? It was all about looking pouty and unconnected and like, I don't care. And like, that made me want to buy those jeans. So that probably says a lot about advertising and Gen Xers.
That's hilarious because designer jeans from the 80s has been a huge topic today. So I misunderstood somebody saying DoorDash, and I was like, wait, Jordash? Awesome, thank you. So up next is Beth Coleman. I'm sorry, Donna Eaton. Beth already
Your
Beth
favorite
already
brand
went.
is Calvin Klein.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Can everybody hear me? Yeah, it's on. My name is Donna Eaton. I lead the analytic practice at Horizon Media and across a lot of different brands and services, Viacom's client. So we work on the reporting aspects, and my job is to kind of link together the reporting, the day-to-day, with some more of the advanced analytics that we need in terms of attribution or mix modeling or even just regressions and, efficiency curves and so on. So we work towards finding out how well our media played and delivered. Okay. So I've been doing it also for a really long time. My favorite brand growing up, which is going to be kind of shocking for some of the people here that know me, because I've always been a feminist, and I consider myself a very dedicated feminist from the beginning of, understanding of what that meant. But my favorite brand growing up was Barbie. Right, Brittany. So, and it seems a little odd that I would be so enamored with Barbie, but my Barbie was different. Where the other Barbies that my friends' Barbies played with, my friends were all like in the little dollhouse, doing all kinds of things with, being Susie Homemaker kind of stuff. And my Barbie got dressed in suits, hopped in that little pink convertible, and went to work. So that's what my Barbie did. Okay.
Thank you, Donna. Okay, up next is Andy Fisher.
Hey everyone, I'm Andy. My official title is Global Head of M1 Advanced TV, working for Merkle M1 Dentsu, Dan. That title itself actually has two lies and a misrepresentation in it. So the two lies are global and head, and then the misrepresentation is, it's advanced on a good day. So I come from a really weird background. I actually started my career in TV over 20 years ago, doing brand measurement, media mix modeling, price promotion response for the people like the P&Gs of the world and the Cloroxes of the world. Moved into digital right before everything crashed, so that was real smart. Spent a lot of time in the digital business, both on the web analytics and on the digital media business. Ran some analytics groups, ran analytics for some holdcos, and eventually made my way to Merkle, Chief Analytics Officer, ran the data business, and now I'm back in TV because it turns out that that's where the interesting stuff is being done from a growth and from a data perspective. So I'm this weird person who has like a data background but is in TV, so very strange. More strangeness will come out too later. It's the alcohol. And as far as favorite brand, see, when I was a kid, we got this thing called an Apple IIc, and so this woohoo, yeah. So that's this. It's got a color monitor if your favorite color is green and that's your only favorite color, and you could it had this disk drive, 5 1/4-inch discs, and 128K of RAM, which like wouldn't display an image, right? So we're talking like maybe 6 pages of text on a good day, and it was the coolest thing. And recently I set it up again in my office. And so I have it, and it's up and running. So if you want to come over and play like Wizardry, Ultima, Load Runner, Auto Duel, Bard's Tale, I got them all. So come on by. And then the worst thing is like these millennials come to my office. They're like, "That's such a cool old Mac, dude." I'm like, "It's not a Mac. Mac was way after this. It was before Mac." So that was my favorite brand. Yeah, follow that.
It's not that easy. So, all right.
Printing was the killer app for the Apple IIc. So that was pretty good. And next up, T.S. Kelly.
I don't have as an interesting story as Andy, but I don't think anyone. He just came from a 2-week train between Moscow and Beijing. So, if after this, I would suggest talking to him.
Yeah.
Yes. Or was that movie Snowpiercer or something like that? So, I'm the head of Impact at Cara, and just joined the organization in late July. And first week in, back into the agency world is a global pitch. So back in understanding what it means to be an agency, just to give a history, I worked in the past 20 plus years, started in radio, working, which I still think is the best or most exciting place in as far as, if you're in sales, it's one of the best places to learn the trade, because if you think about radio, you can always, even if you're number one, you can always buy around the number one audience and still build up on that same type of audience, buying number two, number three, number four. So it was a great place to learn. Over the years, I worked at Nielsen, so I know where the measurement bodies are buried, and those, we're all digging those up now, as we know. As a matter of fact, just the Ad Age just released the articles that the past 5 years, the premiere week, ratings are down significantly. So I'll get the call tomorrow because my job as head of Impact is really about measurement and media performance. So we're seeing how do we transition away from GRPs to something else, and we'll talk about that in the hour to come. Favorite brand? Lego. Okay. And I again, Lego's cool now. It's got Star Wars, all these really cool pieces and parts. Lots of brands hanging their hat with Lego. But I had it when it wasn't so cool. When you used to, I mean, again, my nephew would have the Duplo. He'd be chewing on those big blocks. And he'd want to get the other ones because he'd want to stick them up other orifices. But you get the directions, and I was a very anal retentive type kid. I always wanted to follow directions perfectly, and you'd find that one piece was missing, and then it would just destroy your day. But then you learn to deal with adversity. So it was a very as a young child, and things aren't perfect. So there's lots to learn from not having that one piece of Lego in the box. And the customer service Lego, they're so nice. So I'm 7 years old, and they're sending me pieces and parts, so I got to be really good friends with a lot of folks at Lego. So yeah, that was
Lego, great brand, but have you ever stepped on one? It's painful. Tiff Taran.
Yes. Hi everyone. So my name is Stephane. I usually go by Tiff, so please call me that. If you wonder where the accent is from, it's from France. I think most of you would have figured that out. So I lead the analytics team at Essence in North America. So that includes client analytics, marketing science, data science, as well as product, platform, process, governance for analytics. A bit of history, so been 15 years in the digital industry, including 10 years at Essence. Started my career both in Paris and London, and joined Essence when we were just 25 people. And after a year in London, came over to the States to start the business over here. So it's been a long journey of first starting as a startup and then quickly growing, then the acquisition by WPP, all this. In terms of my favorite game growing up, a lot of what has been said already is really good. The one thing I would probably go with is the Sega Genesis gaming console. Yeah, I think probably between the age of 5 to 12. That was probably my favorite things to do with my sister and my friends. If anyone has played some of these games, which one? Sonic, obviously, Street Fighter, and probably my favorite, Echo the Dolphin. Anyone know Echo the Dolphin now?
Echo the ECCO, yes.
Yes, ECCO. So obviously about the dolphin, and That music, when the dolphin was under the water for too long and needed to breathe, terrible music. You would get very, very scared and very into it. So yeah.
Excellent, thank you. And I don't think we meant to do this by age, but I feel like we kind of went from less tech to more tech as we went down the line here, which is great. Okay, well, we've got a great panel for you guys tonight, but the first thing we're going to do, because we love to get the opinions of people, measurement is in our DNA, so we're going to get the opinions of you. So we've got an audience poll that we're going to run. So everybody, what you can do is get your phones out and text Servata. So text the word Servata to the number 22333. Shouldn't matter if it's all caps or not. And if we pull this thing off, that would be incredible. So, what you should have is a prompt. I'm going to give you a multiple choice question. And so what we're talking about in terms of the question is how will branding change in light of the D2C revolution? So quick word on what we mean by D2C. I think everybody kind of knows. But it's this idea that what if I wanted to start a mattress company? I can make a website this weekend. I can spin up some ads on Facebook instantly. I can get an offshore team to produce. Bam, I'm in the mattress business. D2C. So the first answer is that in this new world of D2C, branding matters more. And the idea is that we're now going from a world where you've got, in any given category, 30 SKUs to 30,000 SKUs, right? And so under all of these conditions, because there's commodity introduced, that branding matters more than ever. The alternative opinion would be that branding matters less, because we've got so much data, we've got precision targeting, we can optimize our campaigns, ROI, can be maximized, so we don't need to do branding. And then the last answer is that actually it's because of these two things working together, it's all going to come out in the wash, and branding matters about the same as it always did. So if you guys are entering in your options, we should be seeing live updates. Anyone? Yeah, it should be changing. I think everyone just likes I don't know the Wi-Fi code, sorry. Okay. Okay.
Holy crap.
Wow. Okay. Well, I think we're good. There's either a glitch and we've got two answers, or it,
I did see just to make sure.
yeah.
And it only changed by 3%. So.
We've got a little. Ooh. So we were talking about this at the beginning of the event, and I thought everybody was going to pick C. And we're not done, but we also have to move on, so.
Well, why don't are we going to talk about it?
We can, but what we'll do is we'll talk about it. So great suggestion, TS. Do you want to give us your thoughts?
I mean, I'd say just even a point is that if you look at a lot of the companies that are investing in TV for the very first time, or early in their experiences, are the D2C brands. They're buying TV. They've already gone and done the guerrilla marketing, built wonderful products, great word of mouth, and now they're venturing into a world where they're battling the giant competitors in the space. So you mentioned mattresses. Casper is now in review. They're looking for an agency to help them with their TV. Well, they're offline because they understand. They've got the digital down. It's in-house. Now they're looking for TV. So there is this, I think, as brands grow and evolve, they're going to need an understanding of how to do everything. They're going to need to understand what they do with data, what they do with measuring performance, but they're desperate for help with their brand. And I think that's perhaps the number will move there. I don't know.
And that puts them in probably category A, I would say. Yeah, the example we always give is the Dollar Shave Club, right? Which I think is, one way to look at it is that, oh, these guys have revolutionized the brand space, like going direct to consumer. There's such a huge success, and then branding doesn't matter. But if you look at what they've done, what they really did was run a killer brand campaign. So they had amazing creative, great marketing, really good storytelling. And if you've used their product, I don't know if there are any fans here, but it actually is pretty good. But I think they've won based on an amazing campaign.
One of the things that our biggest growth is D2C. The category is exploding, and people come to Viacom and other big media networks. It's for branding. It's because they've plateaued, and they want to be part of the big game, and that's the only way they can grow. And 2 is to build trust, and that's part of branding. And that they find that all the brands we've just named are really high quality D2Cs, but for every high quality D2C, they're sitting next to in other environments, ones that, are fly-by-nights, and that they need the trust that people have in big media to be able to establish credibility and continue to show them a big player.
I have an interesting take on that as well. It's interesting that the brands or the people that were saying TV is dead, TV doesn't work, or TV is not necessary, we want to have a total digital campaign. I think they're starting to see that TV does work, TV does reach mass. If you really want to hit a mass audience, you need that reach. But TV to me is also OTT. It's the Hulus and Rokus that can be bought digitally, but they are essentially, you are watching a TV show, whether you're binging it or you're watching it over the course of a month or 6 months or whatever. So I think that really speaks to the fact that from a full marketing perspective, if you really want to, make a move in your advancement of your brand, you need all the channels. It's not like you can make inroads anymore with just one. You wouldn't just do TV. You wouldn't just do social. You wouldn't just do a digital campaign. You need it all.
And if I can just add to this, I think, so considering the question, the barrier to entry is much lower, which is why with less branding, it's easier to get more, at least at the beginning, and we've seen so many D2C brands doing really, really well. But when you're looking to scale or when you're looking to maintain, that's when it gets harder, and that's why we have those brands who are now looking at going cross-channels and really stepping up their investment. The same way that established brands are also realizing that they really need to sustain their investment in order to maintain their market share.
Yeah, that's a great point. So even if you start out with, with really good sales because of, you've got certain advantages going direct, eventually you have a brand. And in order to build that brand, you have to invest. So if we believe that brand matters, let's jump into some measurement topics. So, Andy, I'm curious to get your thoughts on this idea of, with the data revolution, we've got lots of ways to measure outcomes. And as a result, we've now got fragmentation, not just in targeting, but in measurement and the opportunity to measure outcomes. So I was curious if I could get your initial thoughts around this idea of, causal brand lift measurement or causal measurement of any kind when something more along the lines of multi-touch attribution has gotten a lot of pickup here in the marketplace.
Oh boy.
Starting light.
Yes, he lets out a slow sigh. Okay, so I'll begin the rant about attribution. It's people generally don't know where the first attribution models came from, but they didn't come from digital. They really came from two places. They came from direct mail, and believe it or not, they came from TV. And so in the 1970s, what people were doing is they had panels like home scan, things like that, where they track what people would track what they bought, and then you knew which DMA the person was in, so you knew which ads hit the DNA, calculated opportunity to see, and you had a panel of people, and then you would actually calculate how the TV would actually impact the probability of buying something, right? That's where it came from. What would happen in the 1970s, though, is that you'd have four things that made the attribution really good, which have been lost. The first thing was everyone who did attribution back then attribution looked at incrementality. And I argue if you're not looking at incrementality, if you don't have that, you're not really doing attribution. Second of all, everything used things like ad stock, figuring out how ads decayed over time. That's also been lost. The third thing that happened was that all of the different systems had ways of correcting for the fact that you would lose panelists. These techniques could be applied very similarly for the ways that you have cookie deletion, things like that, or just in blocking. And then fourth of all, everything would project to a total US, right? So you'd have a projection based in there. Like all that stuff got lost during the attribution revolution that happened in digital, and it's like slowly being rediscovered. And it's kind of funny because if you were to take most attribution schemes today and take them back to like 1981 and pitch them to a big CPG company, you get laughed out of the room, right? And so, but it's all starting to come back. So like a lot of what needs to be done in the attribution space is a lot of it is us rediscovering our past. And the industry has a long way to go on it, but it's getting there. So I apologize for the downer and the rant, but like that's what attribution is. And quite frankly, there's one way you can tell if an attribution scheme is good, and that is there a scenario in your attribution scheme where the value of the media can be zero? And if your scheme does not allow the value of the media to be zero, you don't have good attribution, right? So just saying it that way. So sorry, I'll stop.
Rants allowed. So TS, wondering if you can kind of give your opinion on how we can protect ourselves from this idea of attribution liability.
Attribution liability. Can I phone a friend? Well, I sit on a panel with a lot of different folks from various backgrounds. I used to work in my first job in college was doing master control at a TV station, and it was like a monkey on roller skates. And my job during the breaks was this big bank of VTR tapes. Those are the tapes that are like really big honking tapes, are bigger than VHS tapes. And those are like the ones that they used to use when it was analog back in the good old days. And I was the direct response monkey. And my job was to take in the traffic log, which was to tell me what to put on the air between the episode of Banana Splits and Spider-Man and whatever else we were running, to put on these paid commercials. And they said, I'll just pick one from A, one from B, one from C. So there was a Chia Pet, there was a Ginsu Knives, the spray-on hair, all kinds of really cool ones. And my job was to just kind of pick one and so forth. So I'm going to try to answer this question obliquely, is that there was no science to how I was performing this. It's just that there was this direct connection to an 800 number that was listed for each one. We got a special 800 number, I know that. But the metrics that came about was just, at least from the lack of metrics, was me penciling whether or not I correctly put on that it was the Chia Pet ad, or it was the Ginsunai ones, or all the other ones that would run. And that data then eventually went into a traffic system that eventually went to a company that was paying the station to air those. And the metrics back were whether or not there was call center activity or some other type. Again, he talked about the panels, et cetera. There was so much garbage. I mean, I sometimes used to forget to put in the material. I forget to put in. Oh, I think I do it like the way that I'll give it another way is that if we went back to paper diaries, looking just how Nielsen does paper diaries, you're supposed to fill it out for a given week. Many times folks didn't necessarily do that. They'd get $1, but they'd have to fill it out. At the end of the day, I was kind of filling out the traffic logs, and I have no idea what I filled out. So anyway, just as far as liability goes, I was probably the worst culprit of that. In today's environment, at least when it comes to attribution, I am on the other extreme, because now we're trying to, again, measure specifically to outcomes. If we're talking about guarantees from broadcasters, the numbers are going down, 43% in 5 years for Premiere Week. The numbers are going down. So they come to us because, as our good friend from Viacom said, is that consumption is happening all different places. I can't necessarily prove that exposure and outcome are connected from a single data set. So I really actually can't answer that question from at least my point of view from the existing data. We don't necessarily have a solution in my mind right now that is deduping audience. So I am stuck to doing models to at least understand what the universe is for delivery. And then I'm wound up using, again, almost like the other folks, is that I've got folks that are still filling in the blanks. Either they're doing it willy-nilly or they're doing it like I did back in the 80s, and making it up as they go along. So I actually think right now we're in the Wild West when it comes to attribution, and haven't learned the lessons from the past, haven't learned what we need to do to combine TV with digital, with print, to provide a good attribution system. I've got my own ideas at Cara, and we're going to pull them out. I'll say more. I just don't. As I said, I think we're in a huge abyss, measurement chasm, and a huge opportunity to change that. But the liability is everywhere.
There's definitely huge opportunity right now. Donna, how are you guys thinking about incrementality and solving those challenges?
Well, it's when you were saying, incrementality, you also talked about, TV and how that was the early days of attribution. I remember being in meetings with clients, major CPG brands back in the day before digital was there. And the question was, is my advertising working? And I was like, well, depends on what your definition of working is. But we looked at it. I started back in the day on the research side. Before there were internet surveys, I did them with, going to malls. We had a group of people who would go out to a mall, intercepts, telephone surveys, panel surveys, and so on. But we did the thing where people wrote in consumption, and that was people's idea of saying, well, I have behavioral data. I remember sitting with a client once, and they said, well, we know consumption. We have behavioral data. And I was like, great. Where did you get this? I was shocked. I was like, what's going on? And they said, yeah, we get these surveys back and people fill them in. I was like, that's not behavioral data. I'm sorry. So, I jumped ship when we had the digital explosion, and I wanted data, so we ended up on the digital side. And then the phrase of attribution got bantered around so much, and it got to be like, well, what is attribution? What are you calling attribution? And it could be anything. Facebook was saying they do attribution, but it's only among Facebook. So you're going to say, okay, here's my ads. They are working on Facebook. Well, that's not attribution. Not when I have a full media plan that runs the gamut from TV to print to out of home and all of this other stuff. But to TS's point, this is the Wild West show. It's a new thing all the time, and the TV being tagged, programmatic being a part of that, programmatic playing a huge part in our ability to reach different audiences and capture that data. But we have to understand a couple of things about how we determine that incrementality, which I believe is key to this, because, when everybody started bantering around the term attribution, people were talking about, well, first they went to digital, and then they were on Facebook, and then this percent went to search. It doesn't really matter what order they went, but to what impact did each of those channels have on the conversion, on that incrementality. And I think that now, because of people like us on this panel, we're starting to preach that you need to have a better mousetrap to understand what that lift is. And it's not enough to just say, yeah, search, 75%, 80%, that's your key. Search last touch, man, but they're rocking it. Put all your money in search. So you need to have all of this water to lift up the boat, as they say. But I think that the attribution term, and we need another one that gets at incrementality, sample, okay? So it's not enough to just have that sample of people filling out the card and sending that in. We need that real behavioral data. And thank God we all have tracking devices on us all the time.
If I may, want to hear a fun fact? Here's a fun fact. These fun facts get me in trouble. Does anyone know where last touch attribution came from? Like why people implemented last touch attribution everywhere? Well, it actually came before Google existed, but Google certainly embraced it a lot because it sure made search look good.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So let me tell you the story of Last Touch. It's because I was in some of the rooms where these meetings were had. So I'm going to take you back to the late 90s. You know, Y2K was a thing. The Matrix was about to come out. Fat Boy Slim was like really cool, right? The Beach by Leonardo DiCaprio was the movie. And the digital people were starting to do log level processing. And the digital people had a real problem because if you're processing logs, you have to be able to process 24 hours of logs within 24 hours. Because if you don't do that, it gets really bad, right? And let's also remember, if you wanted to get hosted hard drive space, you had to go to like Choreo or Exodus or someone like that. It was $1 million a terabyte, right? Now it's like $12 from Amazon. But you know, it was $1 million at the time. So what would happen is people would say, oh, well, I want to do attribution. Well, how would they do it? They'd say, well, all these tags would fire, and so I'd get record, 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 record. I'd split them up and put them in buckets by cookie, right? So I'd have a cookie, and then I'd put the record in a glob, a cookie in a glob, cookie in a glob. I'd multi-thread it across multiple different machines, and then I'd do math on the glob, like see what action events there were, see what the conversion, see what led up to that, and say, oh, last touch, do that. Add it all up and reduce the problem to a single answer. That's what actually MapReduce came, and that's what Hadoop came out of that. It's the whole story of that type of analytics. Okay, so if you're saving events in a glob, you're spinning your platters, you index it by time because everything's saved by time. So if you're trying to say, okay, there's an event, what drove it? What's the cheapest answer? Last touch, because you got to spin your platters less. And it was really that engineering decision that drove how last touch attribution was going to be. No one was in the room saying, oh, well, what's the right way to do it? How do we do incrementality? How do we look at the probability of conversion? And how? No. It's like, these devices cost $1 million each, and we only got enough VC money for 3 of them, right? So last touch was implemented. It was an engineering hack. It was never a.
Saying they threw out the old data, just use the most recent.
That's.
So they didn't have to store it.
You didn't have to actually index. You didn't have to spin the platter to get to the old data. Now, interestingly enough, it's funny because all the web analytics tools did first touch attribution. It was for the same reason, because they could hit a session table that had the first touch, and then you didn't have to look at all the nasty little log files, right? And then they tried U-shaped attribution, which made no one happy, and then off they went. But the point I'm making is the entire industry was founded on engineering considerations, not actual marketing considerations. And so now we're in the process of like realizing that the industry sort of realizing that and starting to say, okay, well now we need to tear down the engineering considerations and like start to have real marketing considerations. And this is a good thing. So I think that it's not that we're in a chasm, in my opinion. It's that we now know we're in a chasm. We were in a chasm before. We just had no idea. We were like super happy and like, oh, we've got this great, we're in this great place. We just didn't realize it was a chasm. Now we have a light. So I'm sorry, you know, a little bit of ancient history, but it's important to understand how things got developed.
Keep going, don't stop.
Yeah. Yeah, I can go all night. But yeah,
So-
engineering decision.
My favorite line to say about last touch attribution is that if we really thought that that was a great way to measure the effectiveness of ads, then Budweiser would invest all their money into neon signs.
Yeah. Yep.
Because that's the last thing you see before you go to the bar. Thanks.
There'd be a lot more shelf talkers. Like you'd go to the grocery store and there would be like, it would just be noise, right? Because it would be the last touch attribution.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's how it came to be. Now you know a dirty little secret about the internet, right? Sometimes designed by engineers, not by marketers.
So Beth, we've talked a little bit about some of the challenges with attribution, with measuring incrementality. Can you give us some of your thoughts around how this becomes more challenging, or what the opportunity is to look at this from a cross-media, cross-platform perspective?
So some of the biggest challenges are the people on this panel when it comes to cross-platform attribution, because they know too much and they think about it too much. For us, one of the biggest challenges is, I don't want to belabor the last point attribution, but we get that a lot, and it's throwing the funnel out. And I think part of the problem for us is that we have actually, as someone who works across all platforms, but TV is a big one, we have come so far lately on being able to do some TV attribution. Like if you do think about like some of the work you can do with, all the chips that are in your TV that are telling us what your TV is doing right now, whether most consumers realize it or not, and that we are able to directly match it with consumerism and know what people bought in a way that I did not dream of a few years ago. To me, the epitome was the Chia Pet commercial where, they bought it, and obviously it works. Chia Pet's still on today, so we know that works, but that we've come so far, and the challenge is, to your point, we should be buying all platforms, that you need all platforms to make things work, to resonate. There's a reason there's a funnel. There's a reason why there's a path to purchase, and they're all being done in silos, and the frustration is that we do not have good answers. I can tell you about every single platform I can deliver, and I cannot empirically tell you how they work together. And so I need people to partner and understand that we're doing our best to try to figure out how that works, but no one is there, and I think that comes down to the challenges of the big measurement companies, that there's individual ones who can help you with each platform, but none of them work together and are not willing enough to work together to help get the answers that we all need.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so I want to switch gears a little bit, and the reason for this is because it's a topic that comes up every single time. It's the first question in the Q&A. So we're staying ahead of it, much to the chagrin of some of you. And it's around the idea of anti-tracking and its impact on ad targeting and measurement. So Tiff, I was hoping you could spend a little bit of time talking about this topic, and maybe give your perspective on how this evolution will impact targeting and measurement.
Yeah, so I think it's already impacting measurements, especially when we talk about something like MTA, right, which relies on user-level data. We have already a lot of companies who have started to limit access to user-level data. Google's double-click IDs are soon to go away. Cookie IDs are going away. Device IDs probably will be going away at some point, right? So with MTA solution in particular, we have these issues where the data we're looking at is going to be more and more incomplete, and that has proportionate impact on media exposure that has lag effect, like brand media. So in terms of how we can tackle that, we as an agency need to look for solutions that are privacy safe. And obviously there are a lot of companies now who are developing their own clean rooms and sandboxes. On the Essence side, we do a lot of work with Google, so we've been investing quite a lot of efforts in developing analytics solutions that are compatible with ADH, Ads Data Hubs, which is Google's privacy-safe environment. And it's been helpful, and we have been able to migrate quite a lot of the solutions we have, but it's definitely not perfect. Like most of the similar clean rooms environments, so ADH is meant to operate primarily within the Google stack. So unless you have all your media on the Google stack, you are leaving part of your media unmeasured. And also, again, because of privacy concerns and ITPs and all this, even the data and the cuts that you can get to ADH are limited to cuts where you have 50 observations. So you don't get the same level of granularity that you would get when you were looking at log level. So yeah, I think the answer is we don't have many options other to really invest in looking into the solutions. The identity graph space is also another place where it can help to solve some of those issues, but a lot is to figure out, and a lot is ahead of us.
Yep. Donna, any thoughts for what you guys are doing over in your neck of the woods there?
Okay, I totally agree. I don't know if anybody saw the New York Times article this morning about a group of clients, agencies, and so on that were looking at coming together to get beyond the walled gardens, because you said a very good point that resonated, which is you're missing some of that mix. As long as those walled gardens exist and we don't have that data, we're going to come up against gaps in the data, misinformation, or just making up proxies to handle that gap. I think it's the good data that you need at that log level is a big investment. And Horizon has made that investment over the last couple of years. So we are building out our client data portals that ingest all kinds of APIs with almost every disparate data source you could think of, that we link into our tools, our programmatic and our programmatic buys that are being done via digital and TV and OTT and addressable. So all that data is coming into a platform, and we're building that out at the log level aspect so that we're able to do those slices and dices that will enable us to find that better incrementality, that advanced analytics can prove out a bunch of different things with having log level data. That being said, there are still gaps. We still have the walled gardens that we can't bring in. We can get some data, but we can't get the full picture. So until the agency world and the clients all get together and say, look, this doesn't work for us. We're not going to be able to help your customers, your platform, unless we have a better solution to providing the ads that they want, not just dumping it on them. So it's the Wild West show.
It always comes back to walled gardens, not sharing data. When will they?
Yeah, it's also, if I may, it's also worth mentioning in this era, in this sort of negative sort of space here, there are some things that are getting way better. Like, so for example, in the world of addressable TV, in the world of OTT, particularly where there's an OTT where it's a logged in OTT event, and you are doing people-based marketing, i.e. you're targeting a list, you have linkage to those OTT and addressable TV platforms, the quality of attribution has actually gotten way better, and it's way better than digital, because all that crud like cookies and bots and fraud and viewability issues and all that stuff goes away. So the walled gardens are a huge problem, and I don't mean to in any way downplay them. They're a huge problem. They're a problem every day. But there is some stuff that's getting better, and a lot of that stuff that's getting better is in the world of TV, which is one of the reasons why I went into TV, and because one of the many ways that TV is cool. TV, it's what people want.
All right, thank you, Andy, for bringing us back up on a high note. We've only got about 5 minutes left, and I wanted to make sure that we could take some questions from you guys. So if you've got any question at all for our esteemed panel, please ask them.
I actually have two questions for Andy. Well, it's actually a two-part question. You mentioned 4 things that you have to have for MTA. Do you mind restating them? And 2, do you believe that you have to set a baseline for MTA?
So for the 4 things you need for MTA, number 1, it's got to incorporate incrementality. Number 2, it's got to incorporate how ads actually work, like ad stock decay functions. It's got to incorporate the fact that people are dropping in and out of your sample, like either it's people dropping out of your panel, or cookie death. And then finally, it has to be projectable in some manner to the entire campaign. Okay? So those are the 4 things. And then the second question, sorry,
do you believe you have to set a baseline for proper MTA?
Not necessarily. I mean, so it's complicated, because if you're really doing MTA well, what happens is you have a whole class of things that you can look at from a person or cookie or panelist basis, and then you have a whole bunch of things that you look at from like a geography over a time basis, like TV. And you actually want to basically put the two together and solve the model simultaneously. And so if you do that right, you should naturally incorporate baselines into what you're doing. But I do see a lot of successful things where people say, oh, well, we've had this always-on program in TV, and then we're going to do MTA, we're going to look at the incrementality of MTA. That incrementality is still valid, right? But as long as you do MTA well, right? That's the key, is doing it well. The other thing too is, like, you can complain and moan about MTA and attribution all the time, but you can't get out of it. Like, at the end of the day, you have to say, like, I just spent $53 million. What happened? What did it do? Right? It's gonna happen. It's there. It's like, the 3 laws of thermodynamics, right? You can't win. You can't break even. You can't stop playing. It's that, right? And it's that you can't stop playing. So you have to have some form of attribution or causality in your world, or else the universe doesn't make sense.
Is that blackjack or thermodynamics?
For me, the two are equivalent.
Awesome.
For the whole panel, I want to ask each of you to estimate the share of advertisers that are aware that they should use controls, and to have some view of incrementality and not just look at uncontrolled attribution.
I'd say about a third. I mean, again, that's one of the reasons why I guess some of our jobs exist. Sometimes there's a momentum issue too, as far as their comfort level doing triple M or MTA. So I got about maybe a third. So
Go for it.
Of those that are doing MTA, which are incrementally based, or is it of total all?
Aware that incrementality is a problem, that machine learning makes it harder, or there should be a control.
I'm going to go just a little lower. I'm going to go with like 25%.
Is that the factor right there?
I would also go with a third. I think most most agencies and advertisers who do MTA don't include incrementality, and in our industry, MTA and MMM are probably the most common measurement solutions, and both are correlation-based measurements. So that's basically completely ignore the concept of causality.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the advertiser. So for example, if the advertiser is a giant Fiserv company, then they 100% know that they should be doing, that they should have holdout. And everything in their...
placebo test for their products, so familiar with the
Yeah,
concept.
and they do, and they send $1 billion worth of direct mail, so they're kind of familiar with that concept too. Once you get into advertisers, particularly advertisers that don't have a direct relationship with the consumer, where that is disintermediated, and they don't have good consumer data, and their focus really hasn't been on analytics, but instead being a real focus on understanding the brand, delivering reach, that sort of thing, then it drops down to the 25% or so that the panel said.
I would say a third do. I would say a third have no clue. And I'd say a third totally have a clue, but are so smart they gave up. They know it can't really be done, so they're like,
Yeah.
not to something else.
It's like people who are so smart that they smoke.
I'm not a panelist, but I'll answer it.
Where are you gonna put it?
I think in theory,
You gonna go over with her?
so everybody, in theory, I think believes that that's important, right? So I would put that
There's definitely a
number.
lot of people have no idea.
I would put the number much, much higher than what we've talked about. I think in practice, I would put it much lower. So
What do you mean?
those who are actually
They know in their
implementing,
hearts.
they know in their heart they need to do it in practice.
Yeah, so I think theoretically maybe they know about it, but they have
They
somehow,
learned the scientific method.
yeah, they have somehow locked into the partner, the methodology, that they've sold up the food chain, and that's what they're going with, and nobody's changing their mind.
Okay, one more question.
Thank you.
Sorry, two more.
This could probably be for any of you, maybe on the culture side. But a lot of times advertisers can get caught up with like benchmarking and comparing their performance. Like, how do you guys approach that? And is there a right way to do it? Should they approach benchmarks, or is everything completely unique?
I can answer that. We do reporting on a regular basis, so how do we understand whether our campaign did better than last time if we have a certain conversion metric or whatever? How are we going to ascertain whether the strategy changes that we implemented either attained a benchmark or exceeded it? So from that standpoint, it's important to have that as your regular reporting. When you start to get into your modeling and all of that, you don't really want to say, oh, well, this bit met benchmark, so we're not going to pay, we're not going to pay attention to that. That's not how you would look at an incrementality or a mixed model or an attribution model. So in terms of regular reporting, I think we need something to go on to say it's working, not working, and how we optimize. So, and something to kind of keep track of as we go. Otherwise, it would be like, yeah, well, campaign sort of worked, I think. Did it do better than last year? I don't know.
They're always going to
It's-
ask that question.
Yeah,
It's always going
it's always going to be, like, what is it compared to? And comparisons are good.
Final question?
Yeah, and this may be a quick question. It's kind of a follow-up to the one prior. For the advertiser, for the companies that we had said that 1/3, Beth, you had said that are too smart to engage in control holdout-based measurement. Does anyone on the panel have any success stories for kind of breaking that paradigm? I don't know, just obviously moving into my specific role, but thinking like, how are ways to take individuals who maybe over the measurement opportunities we're putting in front of them and kind of getting them to re-believe in proper measurement methodologies?
We do have success. We do have success stories. I would say the best examples are when we truly partnered with the agency or the client, and we were all walked in with really realistic goals. I think one of the problems too is we get asked as a media, advertising provider to provide attribution and metrics on campaigns that are essentially institutional advertising, or just like the goals aren't clear. So the best partners are the ones who are so clear on their goals and their creative marries, and they're willing to in some ways share sales data, as opposed to often what we do is tell you about your sales lift, which seems so ridiculous for me to tell you about how much money I spent on geolocation or receipt data or something else to tell you how it did when you have that data. But the best partners, which can be rare due to literal circumstances, you can't, everyone keeps things tight to the chest, but when those magic moments happen, we've gotten there. But I can count them on his hand.
I totally agree. When you get that conversion, you get that sale data from the client side, that's gold, because now you can actually say you made a difference, and you can actually attribute it, and you can judge whether or not the campaign was successful. And it's to, having somebody who says, I don't want that control group, because they're not going to, what some people have said, waste impressions or hold people out of the target audience because everybody counts. I need them all. I need all those eyeballs. And that is it's a fear that people have because they don't understand sampling methodology and understand the fact that you have a group of people that you're understanding via that ability to segregate them from the people who don't behave the way you want them or have been exposed or whatever. So it's key to do, but some people have a misnomer about using that test and learn culture and don't participate in it. So, we try to push a test and learn culture whenever we can. I think it's a key thing to have, to be able to say whether or not you're successful because you did a test, you did a holdout, or some baseline occurred.
Yeah, also, two things too. It's not as bad as everyone's making it out to be. Like, literally, for certain mediums, like, for example, addressable TV and for OTT, 100% of our clients do test and control. Like, literally 100%. It helps that we host all their databases, so we have access to be able to build those measurement infrastructure for them, or at least deliver that information to them. But in those mediums, there's certain mediums like addressable TV or like OTT, specifically logged in OTT, where the ability to do test and control is excellent. And remember, if I'm going to go buy addressable TV, I'm going to give the addressable TV vendor a list. And I'm going to be like, okay, here's the ID space that you operated. Of this ID space, for this ID space, here's a list of people in your ID space, or a list of households in your ID space that I want you to reach. I'm going to know what the control is, right? And I don't have to pay for the control, right? I don't even have to get that inventory bonus. Like, a lot of times, if you want to do this stuff digitally, you either have to get stuff bonused from a portal, or you have to do some really exotic technique like ghost ads or something if you want to go through in the programmatic world. So in certain mediums, it's actually really easy and really straightforward. And for those mediums, like we literally, everyone is doing test and control, multivariate testing, within segment testing, creative optimization, like that's happening. Within certain other mediums, it's actually really hard to do. Like, so for example, it's harder to do in linear TV, right? If I go to you and I say, okay, here's a whole bunch of IDs that I want you to optimize against through Advantage. Give me a linear guarantee that you're going to reach 75% of my IDs, which you do, and it's great. I love Vantage, cool product.
I was just going to reinforce that about linear television.
Yeah.
That there is a lot of really good services out there. Mentioned about auto content recognition. Set-top box data, combining it. I would like to think Nielsen can combine LG data they get from that they have in-house now with their panel. The challenge, I think, with some of those solutions is the control and expose, because I've seen some of these lift calculations, and they're just, you could do the lift calculations like Bootstrap, you do it 50 times, and I'm going to get 50 different answers. And they're going to give me, I remember working with some of the, again, looking at display advertising just a few years ago. I never saw a lift I didn't like. It was always 4% up. It was always 4% up. But you want to build, how can I build norms if I can't necessarily trust that? So there's, addressable is the easier part, the linear not so.
Yeah, linear, like how are you going to build your control? Well, you could block out a couple DMAs. You still got to pay for that, right? In fact, it's more expensive because then you have to deal with the operational aspect of blocking them out, right? And so it's just certain mediums are just easier to do this in. And for the mediums that are easier to do this in, we see tremendous success.
It almost solves its own problem, because if we see linear television dropping, as I just talked about before, 43% 5 years from premiere week, which is awful. There's a lot of bright spots in there, but the market is transitioning to on-demand and to these other environments, a lot more addressable. So there's a lot of positive things to say about television. So just make sure the measurement can catch up.
Yeah, it's also worth mentioning once again, doom and gloom, not, just to be clear. The average American watches slightly over 6 hours of professionally produced video per day. It's unbelievable. That amount is actually going up slightly. And what is going on is the linear side is declining, and the OTT connected TV side of it is more than making up for it. So TV itself is a growth industry. What is being challenged in TV is not consumption of TV. It is the legacy business models of TV. That's where the pressure is right now. And some people who have those legacy business models are going to be in serious trouble. Other people are going to be able to adapt and grow and do amazing, wonderful things. So the overall TV business is actually in a really good place. It's just the legacy models are creaking.
Awesome. Thank you, Andy, Donna, Beth, Tiff, TS. Big round of applause. Thanks to everybody for coming out tonight. Really appreciate it. Bar's open. Go have some fun. And come talk to us. We love talking about measurement.